Hello and welcome along to episode 3 of the Monday Review. Lots to dissect and discuss, and plenty has unfolded over the course of the last 7 days. We'll reflect upon the classic trials at York in the shapes of the Musadora Stakes and the Dante, the Lockinge over the weekend at Newbury, and of course, a certain owner's comments over the weekend, which have ruffled plenty of feathers in terms of the racing world. And as a result, they've seen Roger Varian lose all of his Ammo Racing horses, including Stable Star and current Ammo Racing Poster Boy and Champion Stakes winner King of Steel. Now, a good starting place is, of course, the York Dante meeting. A wonderful week as always. Plenty of interesting clues that we've seen over the course of the last couple of days, really. The Derby picture itself, it's looking fairly weak at the moment. Arabian Crown was the latest notable absentee to come out of the Derby. The very impressive Sandown Classic trial winners met a setback, and hopeful, fingers crossed, we'll see him at some point later on through the summer. But again, you have to feel sorry for Godolphin, who's lost another huge contender for the Derby, really, following on from the tragic demise of Hidden Law post Chester Vase. Arabian Crown again has now will now not run in the Epsom Derby. And again, that's bitterly disappointing for Godolphin in terms of their potential Derby picture. It looks like Godolphin's chances of winning a Derby this year are diminishing pretty quickly. The Dante, going into the Dante, I think a lot of people wanted to see an impressive winner. We got that in the shape of Economics. The only thing was, Economics is not in the Derby. He was in the Derby originally. Connections took him out, and for him to get back into the Derby again, the Connections would have to stump up the smallish term, I would say, of 75 grand to see Economics take his chance in the Derby. He was mightily impressive on the eye, visually so impressive. Is he a Derby contender for me? I'd be surprised if they supplement him. I feel like he's very physical, very raw, very green. Would he be suited to Tatton Corner, the Camber, and all of the buzz around Derby Day at Epsom? I'll be very surprised. I think he's a young horse. I thought it suited to Royal Ascot and the King Edward. A mile and a half on the galloping track will play to his strengths far better, in my opinion, compared to the uniqueness of Epsom. But take nothing away from Economics, was hugely impressive, pulled right away from his field. The future's very bright for him wherever he goes next. I thought Maureen Haggis, her post-race comments were very fair. He had a leg in each count, as she stated, and I completely agree with her. He's a very raw young horse with plenty of ability, and I hope we see him at Royal Ascot in the summer. Hopefully, they keep him away from Epsom. I completely understand why people want him to go to Epsom. The Derby picture itself, without Arabian Crown now, really wide open, so I can completely understand why people want him to take his chance, being such an impressive Dante winner. But I just feel like he's just going to be much better suited to the test of Royal Ascot and the King Edward compared to the Epsom Derby. Anyway, but wherever he goes next, Economics, he's hugely exciting. It was great to see one of these classic trials for once actually produce a very impressive winner because, in my opinion, as we discussed last weekend as well, the classic trials this year have been slightly underwhelming, whether it be Guineas trials, Derby trials, Oaks trials, have all been slightly underwhelming, in my opinion. So it was nice to see a nice horse hopefully emerge forward now and announce themselves as a very serious three-rod going forward. On the other hand, the Musadora Stakes I thought was bitterly disappointing in the shape of Friendly Soul. She was well fancied to back up what was a very good Pretty Polly success when she beat the very well regarded Cal Palmer at Newmarket on 1000 Guineas Day fairly comfortably. I was surprised to see her back out so soon after that. 10 days after winning at Newmarket, we saw her back out here again. And on declaration this morning, I almost had to double take really because I did not expect to see her out so soon. And she ran accordingly, in my opinion. Bitterly disappointing. Finished last, hung right in the home straight, and ran no sort of race at all. Hopefully, it's a case of put a line through that before going to France for the French Oaks. I can kind of understand why Connections looked at taking her to this. On paper, it looked a fairly weak Musadora, so perhaps Connections looked and thought we might have another nice chance of getting another Group 2 into her before going to France and taking our chance as a dual Group 2 winner. The race itself was won by Secret Satire in gutsy fashion. I don't think long term we'll look back at this Musadora as one that's produced too many nice horses. Take nothing away from the winner. She was very gutsy, very impressive in the end, and hopefully she'll take her classic somewhere along the line later on this summer. But as I said before, I thought it looked quite weak on paper and it delivered accordingly as well. I don't think there'll be a Musadora that lives long in the memory. And Secret Satire might go on to be a nice filly in time, but we'll just have to wait and see. I thought Francophone looked fairly exposed over the course of the season as well. And I'll be surprised if the front two really go on to achieve too much in Pat and Company over the course of the summer. And also to round off the Dante talk, Blue Stocking was very impressive on a seasonal reappearance, beat Free Win very comfortably. Hopefully we see her go on to Epsom for the Coronation Cup. I get it's only a couple of weeks away. The turnover's quite short between now and Epsom, but she was hugely impressive. And if she goes to that Coronation Cup, August Rodin's a notable absentee from that Coronation Cup. He's going to tap the Tattersalls Gold Cup at the Curragh the following weekend on Irish Guineas weekend instead. So there's an opportunity there. And also, no King is still going to that Coronation Cup either. So it looks to be a fairly open shot of a Group 1 there as well for Blue Stocking. But she was massively impressive. A filly, of course, from last season who had so much ability, so much talent. and she beat 3 wins fairly comfortably and looks to have another bright future ahead of her. I'd like to see her go to Epsom and Coronation Cup. I think she'll win the Coronation Cup. She'll be very hard to beat. But that was a great reappearance in the Middleton Stakes for Blue Stocking, and she's got a very bold future ahead of her as well. And also, finally, to round off the York discussions, it was great to see Big Evs come back. The Breeders' Cup winner, Royal Ascot winner, come back on his seasonal reappearance in the Western Stakes. Again, he was very impressive. I thought people say it was workmanlike. I disagree. I thought he done everything he had to do on his reappearance. He showed good early gate speed, tucked him off the pace, and finished off accordingly. Could he get 6 furlongs in time? I wouldn't be against it at all. I thought he shaped like he could get 6 furlongs. He wasn't stopping at the line, finished and hit the line quite strongly, in my opinion. The King Stand's obviously the next step for him. That's going to be tailor made for him. A fastly run, strongly run 5 furlongs at Ascot, a track on which he's performed at before, winning at Royal Ascot last year. He's a hugely exciting horse, and if it's to be his last season in training, I hope he goes out with a bang because he's such a good sprinter, very speedy. I hope they give it another go in the Nunthorpe. I know he ran in the Nunthorpe last year as a 2-year-old, didn't really run to form in that Nunthorpe last year, but he was only a 2-year-old last year. Hopefully, with more experience coming back this year after being in America, hopefully winning at Royal Ascot, he goes back to York in August as a more experienced 3-year-old and can show his true self again because he was very impressive, I thought, at York last week and has a very big future ahead of him. I think he's going to be a fantastic sprinter this season, adds plenty of intrigue, plenty of depth that division. And I'm very pleased that we saw Big Ev's bounce back, carry on, trained on from 2 to 3 visually, and was very impressive at York during the week. Now we will roll into the Yorkshire Cup as well, finally. How could I forget the Yorkshire Cup to round things off at York? Giavoletto's a horse who I've always liked, really. I completely agreed with Marco Botti's post-race comments. He's a horse who, in my opinion, was never seen to be better suited over 2.5 in terms of the Gold Cup trip. He's a much better horse over a mile 6 to 2 miles. He travelled through this race ever so strongly. Sheen Murphy turning for home about 2 or 3 furlongs into the home straight made a very cheeky look over his right-hand shoulder to see William Buick on Vauban scrubbing away. And Giavoletto was a very comfortable winner. He's run some very smart races over the course of the winter in Saudi Arabia and Dubai. Came into this in race-fit form as well. Very classy horse, in my opinion, and we'll see plenty more of him. Hopefully, like a Glorious Goodwood, for example, in the Goodwood Cup, maybe at Doncaster as well, at the back end of the season as well, in the Doncaster Cup potentially. But he's a very nice horse to have in those 2 mile cup races, and he's got a very nice, hopefully a nice season mapped out for him away from those stamina sapping tests like the Ascot Gold Cup, which just do not suit him. But he's had a good winter and he's carried that good solid winter form on into this season as well. But Giavoletto, very impressive in the Yorkshire Cup and looks to have a nice season in front of him. Now we'll roll into the Lockinge at the weekend. Shock winner of the Lockinge in the form of Audience. The horse who'd never gone beyond 7 furlongs before goes up to a mile for the first time and wins. If you could sum up the flat season so far in one race, it would be this. Look, he was very impressive. Arguably had the run of the race off the front. Was he the pacemaker for Inspiral? Yes. But Inspiral didn't really run a race, unfortunately. She didn't run to form at all. Finished a very distant fourth, but I think she'll come on for that. I'd put a line through that. I can only imagine it'd be all roads to Queen Anne next for the majority of these anyway. Witch Hunter as well ran a good racing third at a huge price. I thought Charon as well ran bang to form. Last week, as well know, I'm a big Charon fan. I thought that was an excellent trial for the Queen Anne. He goes with a great chance there at Royal Ascot in a couple of weeks, all being well. He ran a cracking race there and was perhaps just a shade unlucky, really, not to have won a Group 1 there in the shape of the Lockinge. But Inspiral, I'll stick with her as well long term. I think she's a very nice filly. Didn't run a race at all. Big Rock has recently moved stables. You could perhaps put a line through that run as well. People talked about this as a 2 horse race on paper. It wasn't a 2 horse race on paper at the end. It was a procession, really, for the horse who never gone beyond 7 furlongs for an Audience. But another Group 1 for Ifraj as well, Desire. Um, I think if Audience goes off in the Queen Anne again in front, I don't think people will give him, sorry, I should say, too much of a soft lead in front. I think he'll go off a bigger price at Royal Ascot. I just think this is one of those races you could run 10 times out of 10, and this is the one result you'd get out of those 10 where it was a freakish result, really. But take nothing away from the winner, the best horse on the day one, and he goes to Royal Ascot as a Group 1 winner now as well, so it's a fair play to him. Royal Scotsman finished down the field. I don't know what's happened to Royal Scotsman at all. He looked such a good 2-year-old. I was actually at Goodwood when he won at the back at the start of 2022, and he looks to be a very smart horse, but he's just not built upon that. He was disappointing last season at the Curragh, at Royal Ascot as well. Ran okay at Newmarket in the Guineas, but hasn't built upon that at all. Seemingly lost his way. I'm not too sure where they go next for him. It does seem like he's got a bit of speed, so could they potentially drop back down to a sprinting trip potentially? The option potentially there, but I'd be surprised if they do. I think he'll stay at a mile for the foreseeable future. But again, he's a horse who's very much lost his way and he's bitterly disappointing. And finally, we'll round off this Monday review with talking about Ammo Racing. Of course, The news filtered through last week that King of Steel won't go to Sandown next week as a prep for Royal Ascot due to meeting a setback in a routine piece of work, which will now see him out for the majority of the summer. And we will probably now see King of Steel at the back end of the summer into the early autumn. Look, bitterly disappointing, of course, for a horse who, in my opinion, got better as the season went on. Ran a cracker in the Derby first time out after being withdrawn in the Dante last year. Disappointed in the King George, of course, but bounced back to form in the Champion Stakes and what was a fairy tale ending for Frankie Dettori's last domestic ride in England as well. A fantastic way for him to bow out. Look, people's opinions of ammo racing. I completely understand why people looked at this video and were outraged by it. We've seen Ammo Racing go through three retained jockeys already, and they've fallen out of each jockey. Ross Orion, of course, it was publicly stated they had an investigation with him. Kevin Stott last year, I don't think they were happy with the way horses were ridden. Again, it was dragged out through the public and through the media again. And of course, now we've got David Egan, who's now the third retained jockey in about 4 years at Ammo Racing. So hopefully he can stay long term and have some sort of longevity in the purple. He started this season off very well, of course, winning the Lincoln and Buccaneer Fuerte, winning very well at the Curry yesterday. So he's had a good start in those purple colours. There's two sides to every story, and I think that's what people need to sort of consider here as well. A lot of people will look, and some people have said, "Oh, racing likes to close ranks and blame all on the owner." Look, there's two sides to every story, but I've always looked at Ammo Racing, unless I'm aware of it, they don't have a racing manager. And I feel like that's something they lack, a racing manager who can come out and talk publicly and just bat away any sort of controversy. You wouldn't see an Angus Gold or a Teddy Grimthorpe come out and say that people in racing don't know the truth. When you come out and say those sort of lines, you open yourself up to scrutiny, you open yourself up to criticism, and you open yourself up to plenty of comments. I just feel like Ammo Racing perhaps lack a PR structure in terms of people who can deal with things accordingly. Perhaps just advise Kaya Jorpachai on what he can and can't say, really, because visually to me, he looks like a man when emotion can get the better of him. And that comment on Saturday perhaps suggested that as well. Look, I completely understand why he's perhaps potentially outraged at why King of Steel's injured. He's a stable star. He's your best horse you've got. You want him to be at all the big meetings this season. He's met a setback, an unfortunate setback. I understand his frustrations. Is moving horses around the best solution long term? I don't know. It's not the first time he's done this either. He's fallen out with plenty of trainers in the past as well. So he's got a unique way of conducting his business as Kaya Jorbachayan. But I just feel like long term, I think if Ammo Racing are really going to progress, I feel like they need a proper PR structure. They might need a racing manager too. As I said before, somebody who can just talk publicly, do the majority of the speaking for Kaya, so these sort of things don't happen again. Because there's two sides to every story here. I get that, but I just feel like the whole situation and over the last couple of years of all the Ross Orion fallout, the Kevin Stott fallout, I just feel like plenty of these things could have been handled better and perhaps more privately as well. If you want to drag things out in public, by all means do it. But as a business, first and foremost, it just does not look good. I've seen people say that they'll eventually run out of trainers to have horses with. I disagree. I think there's always going to be trainers who are willing to take on Ammo Racing horses. In the back of their minds, they'll be well aware of the repercussions potentially down the line if things don't go well. But Ammo Racing buy nice young horses. We saw it last year as well, Buccaneer Fuerte in particular. And we've seen the very nice horse last year as well, 2 years ago of Richard Hammond as well, Persian Force. They buy nice young horses, so any trainer who even gets approached by Emma Racing, they'd be a fool to turn it down, really, despite the repercussions they could potentially face down the line. And I go back to my original point. I just feel like Ammo Racing long term could do with a racing manager and sort of a bit more of an organised PR structure, just to learn to deal with things more privately than publicly, so that these sort of things don't happen. Because I highly doubt that Kaya Jorba wants to be painted like the bad guy in this, and I completely understand. I saw the Nick Luck interview today on his Nick Luck Daily podcast. I had no complaints of it at all. I thought it was very fair. So there's always two sides to every story, but I just feel like they need a PR structure long term now. So this sort of thing can't happen again because we've seen it too many times in the media now with ammo racing. There's always a controversy somewhere along the line, always something going on in the background. I just feel like they could deal with things more privately in terms of protecting themselves, their reputation, and also their business going forward because it's going to put a lot of people off potentially wanting to work with them. But of course, as I said before, when you've got some nice young horses like they buy, plenty of people will always open their doors for them. But it'll be interesting to see how that one plays out. Of course, look, disappointing for Roger Varian to lose such a horse, a high caliber horse in King of Steel. Of course it is. But Roger's had a good start to his season. He'll bounce back from this. He's a good trainer. He's got plenty of good ammunition in the yard as well. So Of course, it's a setback for Roger and his team, for Raul da Silva as well, man. We've associated with King of Steel. We got on so well with him working with him at home. It's a setback for the whole yard, but they'll bounce back from it. They've had a good start to this season, and they'll come through this experience for the better as well. So that was the Monday review, guys. Hopefully you enjoyed it. Plenty of what was discussed, I should say, and plenty to reflect upon. And hopefully we'll see you all next week for episode 4, reflecting upon potentially the reappearance of Van Dijk in the Sandy Lane, a horse I'm very much excited to see after the back of his 2-year-old campaign. I hope he's trained on from 2 to 3 because he has the potential to be really special. So hopefully this time next week we're talking about a stellar performance from Van Dijk in the Sandy Lane because that would be very exciting. So hopefully we'll see you all next week to reflect upon all of the events at Haydock and across the country.